What's the biggest empire in history? It wasn't Rome, and it wasn't the Mongols. The answer was the British Empire. At its peak in 1920, it became the largest empire in recorded history, covering nearly 35 million square kilometers, almost 1/4 of Earth's total land area, from Canada and the Caribbean, through Africa and the Middle East, across India, and all the way to Australia and New Zealand. It wasn't just enormous in size. It controlled many of the world's most important trade routes, connecting ports across the Atlantic, Indian, and Pacific Oceans. Goods like tea, cotton, spices, rubber, and precious minerals flowed through this vast network every day. More than 450 million people lived under British rule, representing nearly 1 in every 4 people alive at the time. Its territory was so widespread that somewhere within the empire the sun was always shining. That's why the famous phrase became, "The sun never sets on the British Empire." Although its colonies eventually became independent nations.
This tiny island almost sparked a war between America and the British Empire because of a pig. Not over land, gold, or politics, but because of one hungry pig. Years earlier, a poorly written treaty left both nations claiming the exact same island. An American farmer discovered a British pig eating his potato patch. That single incident triggered an international crisis. The British demanded $100 in compensation. The American offered $7. The dispute quickly escalated. The farmer called the U.S. Army. Captain George Pickett arrived with 66 troops to occupy the island. The British governor responded by sending 3 warships to the island. The British admiral had orders to fire if attacked, but he refused to start a war over a dispute involving a pig. In the end, no battle was ever fought. The border was peacefully settled in 1872. Greenland is almost completely covered in ice, 80% of it. So, why is Iceland, which actually looks like this, called Iceland? The names seem completely mixed up. It wasn't a mistake. It was a Viking trick, and it starts with a murder. Vikings reached Iceland first. One of them, Nadod, found nothing but ice and snow, so he named it exactly what he saw. Generations later, a Viking named Eric the Red was exiled from Iceland for killing a man. So he sailed west, looking for somewhere new. What he found was rocky cold and half covered in ice. But along the coast, in summer, there was actual green, grass, low shrubs, land you could farm. So he named it the opposite of Iceland, Greenland, on purpose, to make it sound attractive enough that people would actually follow him there.
Did you know that an entire megacity with over 10 million people is actively sinking into the ocean? Welcome to Jakarta, Indonesia, and it's disappearing faster than almost any city on Earth. It's not just rising sea levels. Jakarta is sinking from below. Millions of people pump water from underground aquifers, causing the land above to collapse. In some areas, the ground drops 10 inches every year. Entire neighborhoods are already below sea level, kept dry only by a massive concrete wall. The crisis is so bad, the government is abandoning Jakarta and building a brand new capital city from scratch in the middle of a jungle. Can you really just outrun geography? Hit follow to find out.
In Australia, everything is really trying to kill you. It really does have the world's highest concentration of the most venomous snakes on the planet. 30 spider species live right here. Sharks in the south, crocodiles in the north. Ever heard of venomous fish? And of course, tiny toxic mammals. What else could there possibly be? Even the cute one is possibly B, but otherwise, 85% of the country's population lives right here, on the coast. While most of the continent stays completely empty, left entirely to the animals. 541 animal-related deaths recorded between 2001 and 2017, 32 a year on average, 71% involving land mammals. Sharks, 27, mostly off Western Australia. Crocodiles, 15, mostly Queensland and the Northern Territory. Dogs, 53. Kangaroos, 37. Nearly all of them tied to vehicle collisions. Spiders, 0 deaths, since antivenom. Stretching exactly 250 kilometers across the peninsula sits a thin strip, it's called the DMZ, the most heavily weaponized border on Earth. The name stands for demilitarized zone, but it's the exact guard its edges. Yet, the isolated interior has accidentally become a pristine paradise for endangered wildlife. But the true danger is underground. Decades after the war paused, forces discovered a massive network of secret infiltration tunnels dug deep for surprise attacks. At the absolute center sits the Joint Security Area. Here, separated by nothing more than a low concrete beam on the ground. It's the only place the nations meet. Because the 1953 agreement was only a temporary ceasefire and never an official peace treaty, these two nations are technically still at war today. The border is a frozen front line. Will this heavily armed divide ever open up? Or will it remain permanently locked in the shadows of the Cold War? The standoff continues right now.
There's an island on Earth where almost nobody is allowed to go. Deep in the Indian Ocean lies North Sentinel Island, home to one of the world's last completely isolated tribes. The Sentinelese have lived there for thousands of years. With almost no contact with the outside world, they fiercely protect their island, often firing arrows at anyone who comes too close. In 2018, an American missionary illegally landed on the island and was killed shortly afterward. Today, the Indian government has made it illegal to approach the island, both to protect the tribe from disease and to respect their isolation. Some mysteries are meant to stay untouched.
Russia once owned Alaska and just gave up. Sold it for 2 cents an acre, cheaper than a stamp.
Why? Because literally nobody wanted it. Only 400 Russians ever lived there. Mostly just empty tundra and fur traders.
Then Russia lost a war and went broke. And Britain was right next door, like uncomfortably close.
So Russia panicked and quietly called up America. Enter the US Secretary of State. Meet a man hungry for land. They negotiated all night, coffee cups stacking up. Price tag? $7.2 million. For a territory twice the size of Texas. Americans were not impressed. They called it Seward's Icebox. Basically, you bought a snow rock. Then, 1896 happened. They found gold. Suddenly, everyone loved Seward again. Today, Alaska prints oil money, sits on a literal gold rush legacy, and is home to 700,000 people. All for less than 3 cents an acre. Certified bargain bin history.
The longest fence in the world was built to keep out wild dogs. Meet the dingo fence. This massive barrier slices Australia into 2 zones. It stretches for 3,500 miles, longer than London to New York. The southeastern zone has high rainfall, making it a lush green haven. This makes the region perfect for raising sheep and agriculture. Over 70% of Australia's entire population lives right here. But the other side of the fence is a brutal, arid desert. Without this barrier, the sheep would be wiped out in weeks. If one section breaks, the dogs pour through. Follow for more.
In 2009, a legendary Reddit user known as Religion of Peace suddenly passed away. But when internet sleuths dug into his account, the mystery began. See, he wasn't just a regular blogger. Tucked deep inside his server data, users discovered a hidden gateway to a bizarre private website. The site was called Lake City Quiet Pills. On the surface, it looked like a broken web archive, but hidden underneath the plain text was an entirely different story. Hidden in the site's source code was a massive encrypted bulletin board. It didn't contain code, it contained specific dates, locations, and asset logistics. Internet sleuths quickly realized this wasn't local. The digital tracks led to a global network, operating completely in the shadows for decades. And that's when a terrifying coincidence came to light. The dates posted on the hidden forum perfectly lined up with real-world events. High-profile international assassinations were happening on the exact days listed in the code. One specific post went live just hours before a target was eliminated in a Dubai hotel room. The details were too precise to be a guess. Room numbers, entry times, and specific exit strategies were all laid out before the mainstream media even knew. The theory exploded across the web. Was Lake City Quiet Pills actually a live underground job board for real-world international mercenaries? As soon as the Reddit community started connecting the dots publicly, the entire website was scrubbed from the internet overnight. Every trace vanished. Was it just an incredibly elaborate alternate reality game? Or did the internet uncover a real network of hitmen? We might never know. India and Pakistan share a maritime border so deeply chaotic, it literally moves side to side with the ocean tides. This strip of water divides Gujarat and Sindh, but thanks to a historic mapping dispute, both nations claim the entire channel. India cites international law, claiming the true border must run right through the middle of the deepest navigable channel. Pakistan strongly disagrees, pointing to a 1914 map that places the boundary firmly on the eastern bank, swallowing the entire creek. This isn't just about a muddy creek. Whoever owns the channel controls an immense chunk of the ocean, teeming with oil and gas. Because the moving border is entirely invisible, hundreds of innocent local fishermen are routinely arrested by coast guards. The terrain is a lethal maze of toxic heat, quicksand, and scorpions, requiring elite amphibious troops to constantly patrol the shifting marsh. Dozens of high-level diplomatic talks have completely failed. Neither superpower will yield a single inch of this strategic water. Today, the border remains an unresolved geopolitical ghost line where the map changes every single time.
So, are the Philippines actually safe to visit? Let's look at the actual numbers. First up is the capital, Manila. Honestly, it does have a pretty high crime rate, around 64.6. But don't write it off. Just stick to the super safe, heavily patrolled neighborhoods like BGC or historic Intramuros. Now, if we head further south down to Cebu City, things get a lot more relaxed. The crime index drops down to a moderate 51.2. Cebu is basically your ultimate playground. You can go canyoning at Cawasian Falls or swim with whale sharks. Then you have Palawan. This is where you enter the ultimate green zone. Its crime rate is incredibly low, under 30. Seriously, it's beautiful and incredibly secure. Places like El Nido are practically built and guarded just for travelers. Even further south in Mindanao, Davao City has an insanely low crime index of just 28.5. Their local rules are so strict that it literally ranks as one of the absolute safest spots in all of Southeast Asia. And hey, if you hate the heat, head up into the mountains to Baguio City. It's cool, breezy, and super safe. Oh, and tiny Boracay Island? It's under 4 square miles, but it is so safe you can walk everywhere at night. Honestly, just keep your usual street smarts in the big cities and the rest is literal paradise. Okay, this is actually crazy. Cross this one invisible line in Indonesia, and the animals around you completely change. Look at this. Bali is right here, and Lombok is right there. They're only about 35 kilometers apart. On the Bali side, you'll find animals you'd normally associate with Asia. Tigers, elephants, orangutans, and hornbills. Now cross this invisible line. Suddenly you're in a world of Komodo dragons, cassowaries, cockatoos, and tree kangaroos. Between these islands is an incredibly deep channel. Millions of years ago, even when sea levels dropped during the Ice Age and many islands became connected, this channel stayed deep enough to stop animals from crossing. That means the wildlife on each side evolved separately for millions of years, creating two completely different ecosystems just a few kilometers apart. Okay, this is actually crazy. Cross this one invisible line in Indonesia, and the animals around you completely change. Look at this. Bali is right here, and Lombok is right there. They're only about 35 kilometers apart. On the Bali side, you'll find animals you'd normally associate with Asia. Tigers, elephants, orangutans, and hornbills. Now cross this invisible line. Suddenly you're in a world of Komodo dragons, cassowaries, cockatoos, and tree kangaroos. Between these islands is an incredibly deep channel. Millions of years ago, even when sea levels dropped during the Ice Age and many islands became connected, this channel stayed deep enough to stop animals from crossing. That means the wildlife on each side evolved separately for millions of years, creating two completely different ecosystems just a few kilometers apart.
In the Peruvian desert, there's a message so massive you can only read it from the sky. This is Nazca, Peru, home to over 800 giant drawings carved into the ground, some larger than a football field. They were carved over 2000 years ago by people with no aircraft, no drones, no way to ever see their own work. Some lines run in perfectly straight paths for over 5 miles, with no bend and no visible reason why. Some researchers believe they mapped the stars. Others think they were messages to the gods. No one actually knows. In 2024, researchers used AI to scan the desert and found over 300 new figures hidden in the landscape, which means after 2000 years, this desert is still hiding secrets we haven't found yet.
You think Elon Musk or John D. Rockefeller was the richest person in history? Not even close. The real title belongs to Mansa Musa, the king of the Mali Empire in the 14th century. At the time, his territory produced over half of the entire world's supply of gold and salt, filling his royal vaults with untraceable wealth. In 1324, he went on a legendary 4,000-mile pilgrimage to Mecca with a caravan of 60,000 men and thousands of pounds of pure gold. As he passed through Cairo, he handed out so much free gold to locals that he single-handedly inflated the economy and collapsed the regional price of gold for over a decade. Historians say his wealth was so vast, it was literally impossible to count.